Have you ever been so excited for something, only to be shattered in the blink of an eye? That's what happened to Lila Hayes. She spent hours picking the perfect dress, curling her hair just right, and rehearsing her smile in the mirror, the kind of smile you give when you really want something to work. It was supposed to be her chance at love, a blind date her best friend set up. But what she didn't know was that the man who would change her life forever wasn't the one she was waiting for. It was the stranger at the next table, the man who saw her when no one else did. The café was soft-lit and romantic, with tiny golden lights woven through the ceiling like stars. The smell of roasted coffee and vanilla pastries filled the air. Lila sat by the window, heart fluttering with anticipation. She'd never done a blind date before, but her friend Mia had sworn this one was different. "He's kind, successful, and funny," Mia had said. "He's perfect for you." So Lila waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. She checked her phone, refreshed her messages, nothing. Maybe he's stuck in traffic, she whispered to herself, forcing a hopeful smile. Around her, couples laughed softly, hands intertwined, eyes glowing with affection. Every minute that ticked by made her chest feel heavier. The waiter approached again, polite but pitying, and asked if she wanted to order. She declined. She wanted to wait. 20 minutes. 40. An hour. And then she saw it, a text from the man she was supposed to meet. "Sorry, can't make it. Something came up." No apology. No explanation. No attempt to reschedule. Lila's throat tightened. She blinked fast, pretending to study the menu, hoping no one noticed her embarrassment. She'd spent all week convincing herself she was worth being loved, that maybe this time, someone would see her for who she was. But all she could feel now was small. She finally ordered a latte just to have something to do. As she waited, she heard soft laughter from the next table, a group of men in tailored suits. They looked like they belonged to another world, confident, effortless, rich. One of them, though, wasn't laughing. He was quiet, observing, a man in his mid-30s with stormy gray eyes that carried a depth of silence. His name was Ethan Cole. She didn't know it yet, but this moment would change everything. When the waiter placed the latte in front of her, her hands trembled slightly. She took a sip and tried to swallow the lump in her throat. That's when she heard a voice, deep and calm, from behind her. "Excuse me," the man said. She looked up. "I couldn't help but notice, you've been waiting for a while." She blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, yes. He's just running late, I think." He looked at her gently, not with pity, but understanding. "No, he's not coming. You've been stood up." "And honestly?" He paused, his voice quiet but certain. "You deserve better than that." Her chest tightened. Something in his tone, not arrogant, not condescending, made her believe him. They talked. At first, she was shy, awkward even. But Ethan had a way of making silence feel comfortable. He asked about her work. She was an illustrator, barely making ends meet, and she asked what he did. He only smiled faintly and said, "I run a small company." He didn't mention it was a multi-billion-dollar tech empire. Hours passed like minutes. The pain of being stood up faded into laughter and connection. When they finally said goodbye, he slipped the waiter his card before leaving. Lila didn't see it then, but her meal and the embarrassment she'd felt were already taken care of. That night, she went home confused but smiling. She didn't even know his last name. But something about him, the calm, the kindness, stayed with her. Days passed. Lila went back to her quiet life, sketching in her tiny apartment, doing freelance gigs that barely paid the bills, and trying not to think about Ethan Cole. But fate has a strange sense of timing. 1 week later, she received an email from a luxury art agency. They wanted to feature her work at a charity gala sponsored by Cole Industries. Her heart nearly stopped. She couldn't believe it. She'd been posting her illustrations online for years with little recognition, and now, suddenly, she was invited to display them at one of the city's most exclusive events. The night of the gala arrived. Lila wore a simple blue dress, elegant, though she'd stitched it herself to save money. As she walked into the glittering hall, her nerves trembled. Cameras flashed, laughter echoed, and there, standing near the grand staircase, was Ethan. He looked different in a tuxedo, more commanding, but his eyes were still the same, calm, kind, unreadable. When their eyes met, he smiled. "Lila Hayes. I was hoping you'd come." You're him," she stammered, realizing suddenly who he really was. "You're that Ethan Cole?" He chuckled softly. "Guilty. I was going to tell you, but I didn't want that to be the first thing you knew about me." They walked together through the gallery, surrounded by her artwork, pieces full of color and emotion. Ethan stopped in front of one particular painting, a woman sitting alone at a café table, staring at an empty chair. "This one," he said quietly, "is that about that night?" She nodded. "Yeah. It was supposed to be about heartbreak. But now, I think it's about hope." He turned to her, his expression softening. "You know, sometimes life lets people walk away just to make room for the ones who truly see you." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "And sometimes it takes being left alone to realize you were never meant to settle." Ethan smiled. "Exactly." The rest of the evening was a blur of emotions, laughter, applause, and the thrill of being seen not just by the crowd, but by someone who truly cared. Ethan didn't make any grand gestures that night. He didn't promise her forever or fairy tales. He simply said, "Let's start with coffee." No expectations. Just us. Months later, their story became one whispered in the city, the tale of a woman who was left behind and found love where she least expected it. But to Lila, it wasn't about the billionaire or the fame. It was about rediscovering her worth. She had once waited for someone who didn't show up, and in that very moment of heartbreak, she met the man who saw her as enough. And sometimes, that's all love really is, someone who looks at your broken pieces and says, "You deserve better, and I'm staying." So if you've ever been left behind, rejected, or made to feel like you weren't enough, remember Lila's story. Sometimes, being left alone isn't a punishment, it's the universe clearing space for something greater. Because the truth is, you never really lose when you refuse to settle for less than you deserve.